Welcome back to Inside the Kingdom, your all-access pass into the colorful and creative world of comics. This week, our host Nadya Martinez dives into the vibrant worlds of Comics Kingdom's latest editions, the Saga of Brann Bjornsan by Webster and Suburban Fairy Tales by Francis Bonnet. Join us as we explore their comic origins, their journey to King features, and much more.
All right, hey guys, welcome to Inside the Kingdom, the podcast where we're highlighting comic creators that are part of the Comics Kingdom family. And you guys just joined King Feature Syndicate. How did this kind of come about?
Who do you want to answer first?
Either of you. How'd you become a part of the family?
Steven, you can go.
Sure. Actually, I've been drawing my brand, the Saga of Brann Bjornsan, for quite a while now, and I just make kind of Instagram posts and whatnot on that. And then I started thinking, I've been working in the casino business for a while, and I started thinking, what if I were to try to publish this? And I just kind of did a web search of different publishing that did the syndicates that did this sort of thing, and I applied actually for Creators Syndicate and for Comics Kingdom at the same time, somewhere in the summer of last year. And the Creators Syndicate never got back to me, but Comics Kingdom did, and they just liked it. So I was like, yeah, at least something worked out. So yeah, I've always been a fan of Calvin and Hobbes and Popeye. And I mean, I'm a fan of Flashboard and all the stuff that you guys published as well. And I was just like, who's behind this? Who puts this out on the websites and newspapers and stuff? So I was just curious, and I looked it up, sent it in, and it just got picked up. Kind of pretty simple like that, I guess.
Nice. And Francis?
My comic, Suburban Fairy Tales, I've been working on it for 18 years now. Not like consecutively, like on and off. Like I took a break for a little while, but I've just like driven to just do comic strips. So I've been sending to syndicates throughout the years, and like the comic that T. Fugner is the one who I connected with. So I had sent her my stuff, and she wrote back. She really liked it. And it took a little while, but then eventually, I actually saw her at an event in October, back in October 2023, and she said, "Oh yeah, we send me your stuff again." So I did, and she got back to me and said, "Oh, we like it. We're gonna put you on Comics Kingdom." When she said that, at first I was like, "Oh, this must be like a dream or something." Like, is this like real? And no, she was serious. So, here I am, posting the comics, soon. Sorry, I'm really bad live. So if I say something stupid, hopefully that can be edited out. So I also, in addition to doing my comics, I do Archie comics on the side. I think that also gives me like a little credibility. So I think that helped. I've written for other syndicated comics, so I'm doing stuff on the side for Frank and Ernest, and I've sent stuff to Hillary Price for Rhymes with Orange in the past.
So Webster, Saga of Brann Bjornsan, and Francis Bonnet, Suburban Fairy Tales are both going to be joining us in like a week, right? I believe around March 1st. So yeah. That's awesome.
I think mine is February 29th.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Perfect. So that's awesome. It's going to be syndicated there, so people can find you there. And Steven, so you're a comic strip and concept artist, and you mainly work in the gaming industry. I found this really interesting. I'm a huge fan of like Vikings lore. How did you kind of get into, I guess, the concept of like Vikings and the Saga of Brann Bjornsan?
Well, it kind of started a few years ago. I think it was quick history. I've actually I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm an American, but I kind of grew up and lived in Russia for quite a while, and I was working for a Russian gaming industry at the time. They were they were making different video games and stuff. And my boss at one time asked me, what if we made like a Farm Sims game that's a Viking game? And I started sketching it and it never got picked up, but I just liked the concept idea of Vikings making tractors and like trying to gather crops with like their axe or something like that. And I thought that just kind of looked funny. But then on top of that, I've also my entire life, I've been a huge fan of Asterix and Obelix by Gustin and Rizzo, French Belgian comics. And they're not Vikings, they're Gauls, but they kind of have that Viking aesthetic to them. And then on top of that, I'm part Scandinavian. My dad did like a 23andMe or something like that, and we have like a part Scandinavian. And then I just generally look kind of like a Viking. So
behind it are?
It's just kind of, well, actually, no. Hagar actually had, this is the oddest thing. I know of Hagar, but it actually did not inspire me in any way, shape, or form. It's just a happy coincidence that I will be working side by side with Hagar. It's just, I kind of knew of Hagar in the back of my head. I didn't even know that they were still being made by anybody, but it's like, I was like, oh, wow. The Comics Kingdom is really picking up the Viking stuff. So, yeah, it kind of came about. It makes up a lot of things. It came about with from inspiration from that game idea, but it also came about from my fandom of Asterix and Obelix. And then just in general, myself, I like beer. I like mead. I look a little bit Vikingish. Yeah, so.
As Vikings do.
Yeah, and I've most of my life I've lived in the north. Quite literally. So, yeah.
And I guess how do you kind of find like reference? Because like your comic is it pays very close attention to detail. Like I love your details like on the swords and the helmets, the shields, even the ships. I guess kind of where do you like to find your reference in regards to Vikings lore?
So, I mean, a lot of stuff I draw from my head, actually. I've been drawing this, like, especially the characters, I've been drawing them pretty stably since I want to say 2016. And after doing it so many times over again, I already kind of know the shapes of it. This one has a round shaped head, and this one has a square shaped head, and it just kind of flows out of me. But then as for like the backgrounds, I wanted this sensation. Like the joke is that this Viking used to have a very adventurous life, and he used to be go sail the seven seas and raid and pillage, and then suddenly the world got very modern, and raging and pillaging is now against the law. You can't really do that anymore. And he's now married. He's got kids, so he's got to go get a job. And what would be the most soul-sucking job possible is probably the one that not necessarily soul-sucking, but probably for quite a few years, up until COVID, I've worked in a cubicle, and it's not fun. So I thought it would be funny if he actually had to go work in a cubicle. So where would that actually be? What kind of place that would look like? And so if it's modern, then how do you mix the Viking sort of fantasy like look? So like, what would that look like? It would probably be like a city kind of like New York, but it would have instead of like modern, like full on modern buildings, it would have like a Viking building, and they would have advertisements from gnomes and goblins and trolls, and like trolls could work in the IT department. Like there's like lots of stuff that it's just like kind of building on. And I mean, there's a lot of inspiration all around me. I mean, this isn't the most unique idea ever made. I think like Pixar even made a movie that's kind of similar to this. But it's kind of a little bit of my outlook. Also, I'm an avid fan of medieval times, medieval literature. And I kind of like, I look at the world around me, and I know we live in a modern era, but I kind of look at it like, well, we're kind of like just we're still in medieval times, just with gadgets. Mm-hmm. So we have gadgets that makes us feel smarter and look smarter. And yeah, we have indoor plumbing, but we're all like mentally wise, we're still kind of on the same level. Sort of, there's the kings, there's the serfs, there's the knights, there's the lords, there's the pirates and the Vikings and all of that stuff. It's just with gadgets now. So it just kind of appealed, that I thought process appealed to me.
And for Francis, Suburban Fairy Tales is you're the creator of this webcomic series. You mentioned you also write for Archie Comics. How do you kind of work with, I guess, like licensed characters? Because you kind of write about like Rapunzel, Goldilocks, Riding Hood, Pinocchio. Are they all part of the free?
Yeah, they're all public domain.
Yes.
Kind of like Mickey Mouse is now.
Yes.
I'm not going to put him in there.
Sailor Mickey.
Yeah. But yeah, so like those are stories that go back like hundreds, thousands of years. Well, not Pinocchio, but like Cinderella, I know has been, lots of different versions of it. So the characters that I picked were just ones that I knew were definitely in public domain. I stayed away. I think Pinocchio is probably one of the characters I use who's more modern, because I think that was from the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah,
but like in more recent strips, I've actually kind of dropped. I'm not saying drop some of the characters, but they're more in the background. I've changed the focus to the Three Little Pigs, and I've introduced new characters to go along with like that family of the Three Pigs. So it takes place after the Three Pigs. They had their two other houses blown down, so now they're three brothers who are forced to live together in a brick house, and they don't always get along. We've got the big bad wolf who's always trying to eat them. And, they live in modern times, and, they walk outside their house and they have to avoid the wolf. One little twist I liked to put in was that the big bad wolf's sister, Wolfette, one of the pigs is dating her now in the comics. So, and then I introduced other new characters or original characters. Like they have a mother who's really nasty. She's like, oh, you're always doing everything wrong. Why is this house a mess? And they've got a stepfather, soon to be stepfather. They're right now engaged, but he's just like, his name is Dermot, but he's like a doormat. He just gets walked all over. So, and then I have a new character, a sheep who I just introduced called Sir Lamelot, who's kind of like this hippie sheep who is into alternative medicine and,
Yeah, I like the twist you have. It's like very cute, vibrant, colorful, and warm. And the Three Little Pigs have different like personalities. It was dumb and lovable, a bossy know-it-all, and sarcastic snot. So I guess how did you kind of go about like, putting your own twist on all of these characters?
I'll say so. Since I've been doing this strip for so long, when I first started and what I'm doing now is a very different strip. So I get a lot of comments on social media like, oh, like you mentioned Pinocchio. Like, when are you going to bring Pinocchio back? I probably haven't had him in the comic in probably 4 years now. And the answer is, I don't know if I'm ever going to put him back in. I mean, if the story calls for it, but I've kind of narrowed the focus down to these pigs. And so their personalities, some of them are based on me. Some of them are based on like people I know who I'm not going to mention just in case they're listening and might get offended. But yeah, so their personalities just kind of evolved over time to what they are today.
Yeah, because your original run was in 2005, so this is a long time that you've been working with these characters.
Yeah, it's been a while, and then the more you work with them, the more familiar you get with these characters. And then when I first started doing the strip, it was just an ensemble cast of all these fairy tale characters, as many as I could think of, just throwing them out there, seeing what works, what doesn't work. And it wasn't until I want to say the last 5 years that I've narrowed the focus down to the pigs, and it's become a different strip. And, like I've tried to get syndicated before, and, looking back at my work, I cringe at, at my past material. And I can see what didn't work and why it didn't work and why it took me a while to actually get syndicated.
And Steven, you're now working on a graphic novel series. Is this one of your the Russian?
Yeah, this is still very. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. It's this is kind of more of a personal project right now. It's not being published yet by anybody, but I guess I mentioned it to Alex, and he probably put it up there. But yeah. I don't know how familiar you guys are with like Russian folklore. Have you ever heard of the Pugget theaters? Buglet Theater? No.
I know Rasputin. That's as far as it goes.
I know Tetris. I like Tetris.
Yeah, Tetris. Yeah, that comes from Russia. No, a Buglet Theater is in Russian mythology is a giant of a man. He's like kind of like a tall tale, like in our American tall tales. They're usually knights. They are usually humongous, and they usually fight dragons, witches, and actually, oddly enough, invaders from the east. Because if you look into Russian history, Genghis Khan, he had conquered most of all of Russia, along with the Golden Horde a long time ago, and they apparently this folklore is kind of based on true stories. Maybe not the dragons and the witches part, but there were guys that fought back and saved villages and stuff like that. And over time, the Mongol invader would have transformed probably into a dragon. You know how fairy tales they kind of evolve. It's like it started out just as an invader, but his name was like the Great Worm, and then that turns it. Oh, he actually was a dragon. So it not necessarily, but partially it's true. And I think actually one of those knights is his grave is actually Kiev, Ukraine. Ilya Murovets. His grave is still intact. It's like it's not exactly. It's like fairy tale, but kind of true. It's a tall tale, like a tall tale. That's a good way of putting it. And I have a lot of friends in Russia, and kind of. I mean, I get there's a lot of rhetoric right now due to the war in Ukraine and stuff, and I understand and I sympathize with everybody. But one thing that kind of is unfortunate is a lot of my friends kind of felt a little stranded because like a friend of mine, she mentioned that her kid was a big fan of Marvel characters and superheroes, and then suddenly superheroes disappeared. You can't find them anywhere. They all moved back to America. They don't have any access to them anymore. And she like was writing me. She's like, do you think you can come up with a superhero? I was like, yeah, I can do that. And I invented this character. I name him Ivan Bogdanov. He's basically, it's kind of a mix of the Hulk meets Captain America, except in Russia. It's so this kid. If you've read anything about Russian history, you know that they fought the Nazis very hardly. Like during World War II, the Nazis invaded mainland Russia, and many people there's not a single family I know of that did not lose a family member during World War II. At least one person. It's very sad, very serious. And I thought, what if we took a kid who's, the typical superhero trope where his entire family, like his parents got killed and stuff, so he takes up arms. And so what if we took a kid and he accidentally found a magical relic that turned him into this bugatier that could help him fight Nazis. Mm-hmm. And so he puts this relic on. It's a crucifix from the Orthodox Church, because everybody's Orthodox over there. So it just kind of worked. And he suddenly becomes this giant Hulk kind of guy. And he goes out and he fights Nazis, and then he finds out that there are other supernatural beings that he has to combat in the background. And I started writing it, and I was writing it as a graphic novel, but then it actually turned into kind of a novel. I don't really know what to do with it right now. So I've been writing it and having it translated and then send it to my friend over in Russia. And she has plans of getting it looked into. What if we got it published just as a children's novel or something like that? But it was based on that idea of just like someone who stands up to invading tyranny or something like that. And it's a kid. And he's kind of it's an interesting story, but yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised.
Yeah.
Hopefully in the not too distant future, you will see more than just art. It's still in progress. I've just been so busy with my day job, Saga, all of this other stuff. But it is something very much on my heart, and it's actually fully written, but it needs to be translated and edited, and then as to what it would look like in graphic novel form, oh man, that's a lot of work. So I'll see what that would be, but at the moment it's more just written out. But hopefully in the not too distant future, you might get to take a look at it. So yeah.
And I guess with a background like in gaming, and now you're getting into card games and board games.
Yeah.
Do you kind of see like a crossover between like your different characters and universes, or?
For copyright reasons, I can't do too much crossovers. A lot of the card, so if you're into the card game stuff, you should look up Daywalker Syndicate. I'm sure that they'd be happy to the plug in. They are publishing board games and card games, and they, about a couple years ago, they kind of freelance hired me to do some card games, and Ogrefish should be coming out pretty soon. It's their game. They paid me to do the art for it, but it does look very cool, and I'd hope to play it myself. I haven't played it yet, but it's basically kind of Lord of the Rings. It's not Lord of the Rings, but it's like kind of a Lord of the Rings type world, and they've gone fishing, and the fish are like monsters and ogres and stuff like that. But for copyright reasons, I doubt that there'd be a crossover. Unless one day I come up with my own game. So then, yeah, 100%.
And Francis, I saw you were a graduate from FIT in illustration. That's where I got my BFA also.
Oh, congrats, fellow alum.
It was pretty cool experience. What year? You were 2003?
2001, I graduated.
2001. Okay. So I was a little bit after. I was 2011.
Okay.
But we kind of got to study different things. Did you also have to do like a little bit of like graphic design, a little bit of photography at that time too?
We did it. We did it all, and it was actually the graphic design classes that I start. That's like my main job, like actually make money. So I went into graphic design, and I it's another outlet in which you can be creative. Like, you know how it is. Anytime you're working with clients or other people, I'm saying a collaboration, sometimes it's fun. Sometimes you have to deal with things you don't want to deal with, but that's any job really.
Yeah. Kind of like, I guess, encapsulating like everything together.
Yeah. And like, sometimes I feel like I'm just someone's design monkey, like, let's do that. I want like to look like this. And I was like, well, in my artistic, eye is telling you like you should do this, but sometimes people just don't want to listen to you. So, you just got to do it.
And back to Suburban Fairy Tales, you're also going to be sharing some of your like sketches and doodles and unused ideas from your sketchbook as well. Yeah.
So I'm only doing that. So right now, I'm posting older material on social media, and I posted like a sketch on my website of like current strips that I'm working on, but I'm saving all of the new material for Comics Kingdom. Eventually it'll trickle down to social media, but until the launch and then sometime after, it's going to just have to be older material. You want to keep that algorithm up. If you don't post anything, you just go like right down to the bottom.
Yeah, it's a good way to bring in like old readers and also bring in like new readers.
Yeah, and like some people were like, because I'm posting older material before Little Pig number 3 was dating Wolfette, the big bad wolf sister, and he's so bad with dating, so I had a lot of dating jokes where he would just drop the ball. He's texting and they're not replying. All these like funny stories like with him going on dates. And people are like, why is he cheating on Wolfette? And I said, no, he's not cheating. This is from, 2015,
I'm going to have to put like a date caption.
I did, but sometimes people just don't read it.
Don't read. Yeah. You'll write like paragraph and you're like, you missed the entire point.
I know. I put it because I don't want to put like, right, like this is, the first panel, like this is from, for 2015. I put it like small on the bottom, and sometimes they just miss it. I don't blame them.
Yeah. And then you are committed to making comics full time now, correct? You're doing graphic design and comics. How is it kind of balancing, I guess, licensed material like Archie and kind of having to go with, like, how much creative freedom do you have?
Well, with Suburban Fairy Tales, I have, full creative freedom because that's mine. But with Archie, those are licensed characters. I have to work within the parameters that they give me. So sometimes I have more creative freedom with Archie. Other times I don't. So like a good example is like they'll say, we need a story and you have to use this particular character. So recently it's not out yet, but it's Matt Wilkin Boy. I don't know if he's not like a popular character or a well-known character, but he's a character that they wanted to have for copyright reasons. We need to have a new story with him. So I went back and I wasn't familiar with the character. So I went back and I read like a bunch of archives, a bunch of stories with him. And I had to put him into the story just so, based on what they had told me I needed to do. But you get to have fun within those boundaries. Sometimes I think, it's a challenge, but it's a fun challenge.
And do you ever kind of pull from like real life situations? Like you mentioned that some of the characters are like based on your friends. Do you ever kind of expand upon like something that really happened?
Well, in Suburban Fairy Tales, yes. I don't want to go into details with names. But yeah, like sometimes someone will say something and then I'm like, oh, that's really funny. And then, I'll exaggerate it. And there have been times where someone's like, will read the comic and like, I remember having a conversation with you, like 3 months ago, and here it is in the comic. I was like, yeah, like one time, a friend of mine, she showed me a picture of like her, like not her baby, but like a friend's baby. And I was like, oh, I was pretending to be interested in this kid who I've never seen, will never will see. And then I made a joke about it in the comic where, one of the pigs was showing, oh, look at this cute baby, someone else's baby you've never seen. And she ended up reading it and called me out on it. It was pretty funny.
And Steven, have you ever played like Assassin's Creed, Valhalla, or are you ever like inspired by like the world building in video games?
So video games wise, not really. I played a little bit of Assassin's Creed a long time ago, like maybe Assassin's Creed 1 or 2, like when it was really old school, but I didn't really get into it. As to Viking games, gosh, I actually, oddly enough, no, I have not. I don't think I've even played Valhalla. I used to play a lot of Hearthstone from Blizzard. But then I got really ticked off at them. They took them the algorithm. I don't know what it was, but I felt like I was losing a lot of time in the game and not getting very far in it, and spending a lot of money on the cards, and then ended up like, this isn't. I got a lot of work to do. I can't be playing Hearthstone all day, but it's a fun game. I'm not going to say anything bad about it. It's a fun game. You should play it if you don't have it, if you haven't. But let's see. Back in the day, I played a lot of. Yeah, I would play a lot of Blizzard games, and then recently, I think the most video games I played is with my son on Switch. Play like Smash Brothers or Mario Kart, but I think a long time ago I was a much bigger gamer kind of guy, but I'm not that much anymore. It's I just don't have the time for it, I guess.
Yeah, it's time consuming. I think you'll like Valhalla though. It is open world, so it's a little long, but yeah. I think you would enjoy it.
I enjoyed Skyrim, but that was also one of the old. Yeah. So I'm gonna guess it's kind of in the vein of Skyrim. So.
We hope you're enjoying the vibrant stories and behind-the-scenes glimpses on Inside the Kingdom. We have a small favor to ask. Help keep the comic conversation going by subscribing to our podcast on your favorite platform. And if you have a moment, please leave us a rating or review wherever you're tuning in. Your feedback not only supports us, but also helps other comic enthusiasts find us. Every subscribe, rating, and review makes a huge difference, and we truly appreciate your support. Or consider visiting comicskingdom.com and have a look at these comics yourself. Thank you. and let's get back to Inside the Kingdom.
And what about, I guess, say like Vikings on history? That was like one of my favorite series. Do you ever get inspired by like Ragnar Lothbrok or Bjorn?
I actually hated that series. Well, just
No way.
I loved that series.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I thought that was great. I watched it.
I like Ragnar. I will say I liked Ragnar. I liked him a lot, but I couldn't get past the fact that they're all wearing leather jackets. Why are they wearing biker jackets in Viking times? And I did like it. I did like Ragnar, and I liked his brother. I thought that the Christians were portrayed as very weak. I was like, that's not exactly how they were in middle. I mean, look in the Middle Ages, like the knights and stuff. And I'm a big fan of like Middle Age literature and stuff. So it's like, it's not. I will say that I did like Ragnar, and I did like his brother.
Rollo.
I think his name was Lotho or Rollo. Yeah. Kind of hated Loki or Floki, and I hated all of his girlfriends. I hated all.
Well, not his wife, not his first wife.
No, I hated her too. I hated all of the girls.
She was my favorite.
The Shield Maiden.
Yeah, she was okay. Yeah, Larga. She
didn't want to be a Viking.
Yes. No, I actually never really got into it because it was like one of the things that was with me is like if it came out from HBO, I probably would be a big fan of it. But it came out from the History Channel, and I'm like, the History Channel, you're supposed to be showing history. This isn't history. This is Game of Thrones. This is like fake Vikings. So I was like going into it like, I'm going to see something very historically accurate, and they're wearing leather jackets, and they're having Game of Thrones type situations. Like, I'll just watch Game of Thrones. That's that. But unfortunately, no. All my friends and family are fans of it. I'm not. I'm a little bit of an outlier. Here's an example. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, humongous Lord of the Rings fan, but I kind of don't like the Peter Jackson films.
Oh, you got some hot takes.
Yeah, I really like the books, and coming into the movies, I'm like, you kind of missed it on that. The books were so much better. It was like, but Peter Jackson was still all right. I refuse to even talk about the Amazon. That one is, I can't even go there. But yeah, I'm a little hard to please when it comes to like movies and TV and stuff. I like a lot of reading. I like to read a lot. So, yeah,
I couldn't get
go ahead.
into the Vikings on the sequel series, Vikings Valhalla.
I loved it too.
I couldn't get into it. I liked the original one, but I did not like the sequel. Maybe I need to give it another try. I only gave it like 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah, I feel like it picks up.
I think Ragnar actually was the only reason. So to tell the truth, I watched all of the Viking seasons up until Ragnar died. And then when he died, I was like, this isn't worth watching anymore. I don't care about his sons. I don't care about his girlfriends or his wives or any of them. I just cared about Ragnar because he was kind of cool. I thought he was played well. But other than Ragnar, it was all kind of, yeah. But I like that actor, and he did a good job. And as a guy that, like I said, I was into Blizzard games for a while. He played a character in the World of Warcraft movie. I thought that he did a pretty good job in that movie also, even though it was kind of a video gamey kind of movie. I did enjoy him. I tend to like movies I see him in. I forget his name though.
Yeah, I just forgot. I should know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved how like I read the Boneless. They showed like his genius in terms of like battles.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I liked a little bit better. There's another series that's similar to it.
Kingdom?
I think it was called Last Kingdom or
yes.
I like that one a little bit better. It was a little more historically accurate, just a tad more. It wasn't quite as Game of Thronesy. And I know that Ragnar in the Viking series, they didn't actually have dragons or anything like that, but it just kind of felt like they're trying to make a Game of Thrones to me. And I was like, well, Game of Thrones is its own thing.
Well, I had a better Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I was better writing than Game of Thrones, better at everything, but
That's true. That's true. But it just kind of felt a little bit like a Viking soap opera to me. But I did like Last Kingdom better. I like that one. That one's take a little bit better. And again, like kind of like looking into both series. In one series, they kind of made the Christians either corrupt or weaklings. And then in the other series, they had the Christians as, yeah, there were corrupt and there were weaklings, but every now and then they had like, they had that one father, that one bishop that was one out and fought with the boys as well. And he was a strong guy. And then Alfred the Great, they portrayed him pretty well. And I was like, well, that's a little bit more balanced. So, yeah.
And Francis, for you, I guess, in terms of like the fairy tale lore, do you ever like get inspired by the grim dark side at all?
I try to stay more on the lighter side of things, although I'm not saying I don't enjoy, dark stories. But just, I guess it's just my personality. It's like when I'm writing something, it's always like funny and sarcastic and lighter, like bright colors. It's just me.
And do either of you ever feel pressure to keep up to date with like, or reference something, say that's like, because you're both pulling from like more modern things. Do you ever feel like you have to keep up with something that's like, stay trending?
You go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I've tried in the past to do that, and I feel sometimes that dates your work.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you might make it, it's something that's topical right now. Oh, yeah, it's funny in the moment. But if you go back and look at it a year or 2 years later, it's just not going to be as funny anymore. I try to create something that's a little more timeless. So, like, I'll have, like, there'll be jokes about, like, like iPhones or Facebook or something that I think, would still be funny from now. But, like, one good example was, like, during the pandemic, everybody's wearing masks and everything. And I saw a lot of comics, especially, like, on social media, and everybody was wearing masks. They were making like jokes about that. And I was like, I mean, it's funny now, but I'm like, what happens when we're not wearing masks anymore and the world goes back to normal? You go back and you read those and they're dated. So me personally, I tried to stay away from that.
Try to keep it a little more evergreen.
Yeah, more evergreen. I mean, there's going to be times where, maybe I'll reference a show or something and then, it gets canceled, but I like Vikings, but I try for the most part to keep it evergreen.
I kind of do the opposite. I try to find fun, interesting ways of integrating stuff. I don't feel like I need to, but every now and then I'd like to, without overly hurting anybody's feelings. I try to not go too strict. But like, for example, there will be one coming up where Brann finds out that his neighborhood, he's kind of stuck in between two neighbors who hate each other. And one neighbor, he has a banner on his lawn that says, "Make Asgard great again." And then the other neighbor has, "I stand with Vanaheim." And if you read like into Viking mythology, Asgard was always against Vanaheim. And I thought it'd be kind of a funny way to integrate those kinds of things, but without like it being full on, but just kind of. And Brand's in the middle, and because Brand finds himself very much in the middle of all this, and he hates both sides. So he hates everybody.
Yeah, I think that's a reference.
Yeah, I sometimes when I find a way of doing it, I do it. If I don't find any way of doing it, then I drop it. During COVID, I probably I do have some episodes of Brann with COVID. I don't know for sure if I will publish them on Kingdom Comics. It might be kind of like a fun feature later on, but it doesn't seem like it's relevant anymore. Like Chris said, it's an old story. We're kind of over it. But there was this one thing where he's working at his work, like he comes to work, and everybody says, "Have you heard of the COVID plague? Have you heard of the COVID plague?" And it's like all over the place, like all these questions, and he's like, yeah, I get it, and I get it, and I get it, and then he gets to his computer. I don't know how how to explain computers in this medieval world, kind of like a magic mirror, whatever. He gets to his computer and all of a sudden it starts, COVID play, COVID play, COVID play. He gets mad. He pulls out a hatchet and goes, and breaks his computer. And then his coworker goes, man, what'd you do to that? And his coworker comes up to him with a mask and is like, oh, by the way, have you heard of the COVID play? And he's like, oh, come on, man, I'm done. So yeah, I did have a few episodes with that. But I don't think they will get published. I tried it. I do agree that they can get dated, but every now and then some of them will work. I kind of think like the "Make Asgard Great Again" joke would be kind of a funny thing because that doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon.
The horrors.
Yeah. But and there's always going to be somebody that stands for some cause that maybe not everybody understands very much, and they're like, okay, fine, just leave me alone. Don't touch my house. Don't get me involved. But that's kind of I do use some references, some.
And for either of you, do you ever have like any moments of like a writer's or artist block? And how often do you come up with like new concepts?
I know I've run into writer's block before. I mean, I think we all have at some point. But I mean, usually, so I have an idea book. Actually, I have it right here on my table. It's right here.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. It's a little notebook. I just write all my ideas down, whether they're good or bad. Most of them are bad. And then you go back and reference them and like, all right, this one might be salvageable, and sometimes the ideas will be like, you'll have like 3 good ideas in a row and then you'll have like 15 bad ones. And when you have writer's block, sometimes I'll go back throughout the pages and pick something that I may have passed on or something that I was, in the moment I was thinking something different. It's like, oh, I can change this and make it good. Other times I just need to walk away, for an hour, just take a walk and then, refresh your brain. And then you come back and you sit at your table and you try again. Deadlines don't care when you have writer's block.
I'm kind of the same. I'm new. I've been new to the comics game. Francis has been in this a lot longer than I have, obviously, but I have encountered it every now and then. I do the same sort of thing. I have an idea. The idea kind of it's more of a folder on my computer, but yeah, a lot of ideas that I put together, and usually they come to me like. I see something that my wife does that's funny, or my kids do something that's funny, or there's something that I find hilarious, or I find annoying, even, or something that I hate, and I can turn that into a joke, and I'll write that down. And then if I don't have any ideas, then I'll go back to the thing and be like, would this turn into a joke? Would this be able to work? And then another thing is I like to try to start little storylines that can last a few episodes, so that there's not all one-off episodes. But like for example, the mother-in-law comes to town. Well, that's going to generate at least another 5 to 6 stories before that whole cycle ends. Or he's starting his new job, or they're buying a new house, and that can lead it. Okay, so they're moving into this new house, and they got a couple of neighbors that hate each other. Well, how many episodes could that work out, and then like come back to it, and then leave it, and then come back to it? I kind of noticed a little bit of that because I've been a fan of like comic strips since I was a kid, and one of my favorites is Charles Schultz, and he would do a lot of that kind of thing. He would do like the little redheaded girl that Charlie Brown was in love with, and he would have several episodes on that. Or Snoopy pretending to be a World War I flying ace and shooting down the Red Baron, and that would go on for a few episodes, and then every now and then he'd have a one-off that would be on its own, like a standalone or something like that. So I've been trying to do more of that. Like, so this month we're going to look at this topic. This is what's going to be our stuff. And then next month we're going to have a different topic. It's that way it can keep going. But yeah, I've been kind of writer's block, but I kind of do the same thing that Francis does, I think.
And do you have any work that you that you can show us, and what kind of medium that you prefer to use? Because I saw you do some digital work as well, and a lot of pencils. Do you have a medium that you prefer working with?
Or me or Francis?
Both of you, but I guess Stephen, you can start.
So I actually most of my work is all digital. Even the pencil stuff, it's all digital. One of the things I try to do is I try to make my digital work look like it's traditionally done. So I have a lot of brushes. I can share some stuff. So let's see if this works. Share screen, start broadcast. So one of the things I try to do. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
So here's an episode. This is the layer structure of it. But like, for example, when I start out, it'll start out looking something like this, just kind of like sketched out or something like that. And then I'll flesh that into each and have the whole story written out. But yeah, I do everything digital. I do, let's see, find something. So like here's another digital example. This is an idea. This is another thing that I do every now and then. By the way, on the ideas thing, that sometimes if I might have just one frame as an idea, and I'll draw that frame out. So like us taking a road trip and how hard it is with kids, and then eventually that might turn into several panels of comics and story-wide. So, but let's see. There's something on the pencil side. One penciled. Oh, this, by the way, here's a COVID one. But yeah, it starts out kind of more like this penciled look to it. And then I have some ink brushes. Here's my brush structure. I got a lot of brushes here. And I just draw it, and I try to make it look as traditional as possible. Now, I have drawn it a bit. Yeah, I have drawn it a bit on the traditional side as well. Some stuff like this one. Here's another example. So like, here, let's see. Let's go to the pencils. Let's turn this off. And it's all drawn by hand. So it's not like there's nothing that's like AI generated or anything like that. This is all completely drawn by hand. But it starts out just like, whoops, change the layers. So multiply. Oh, there we go. And starts out like just drawing this kind of like by hand. And then once I'm happy with the sketch, then I will ink it and eventually color it. So, yeah.
That's great. Beautiful work. Well, you're right. A lot of it looks very traditional. Great.
Yeah. But that's kind of what I try. I try to make it look as traditional as is possible without it actually being traditional. The reason is because, first of all, I've been working digitally for quite a few years, and secondly, it's a lot easier, especially if you're on like moving from place to place, and I do in fact have 4 kids, so it's easier to draw sitting on the couch with them and stuff. Whereas I am traditionally trained. I used to draw nothing but traditional art. But back in the past, for example, just like, having the big pad of paper, you're drawing it and then erasing it. And also, it's faster to meet deadlines if it's digital. So like you have a deadline, you just sketch it out real quick. It's easier to erase, easier to fix and stuff. But hopefully one day Saga will be so popular enough that I'll start doing a lot more traditional stuff, just to kind of like collector's editions, to have. But it's just it's quicker and easier to do digital. But I try to make it look as real as possible.
Beautiful work.
Thank you.
So I also work digitally. I have for probably like the last 7 years. I switched over. I used to do it traditionally, using Bristol board and paper. Bristol paper and pen and ink. I can share my screen. Stephen, I noticed that you had like with your comic strips that you had like 60, 70 layers worth of, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I have a pencil layer, an ink layer, a color layer, and that's it.
The reason there's that many layers, yeah, I could do it the way you're doing it, but the reason it's that many layers, it's a lot easier to share it on Instagram if it's been broken out. So like if it's broken out of the panels individually, and each individual panel has its own pencil ink and color, then let's say I wanted to share it on Instagram, then it's a lot easier to just share that one panel. And I don't have to cut it up or anything. It's already prepped and ready. And that's probably the reason why I do it. And also another reason is probably just from habit, because working in the gaming industry, there's a lot of feedback and changes that your boss will ask you to make. And it's a lot easier to do than if it's broken up into a lot of layers. But I do eventually flatten them. Like once it's stopped being a working file, I'll flatten. Like when I send it into to Kingdom, I flatten it all. It's just if they need to edit something, they need to change something. It's a lot easier to change if it's not if it is quite a few layers as opposed to just one or two.
Yeah, I'm sure the file sizes on that are huge.
Not necessarily. It's not too bad. So like I think like each of those comic strips are somewhere between 150 megabytes to 200 megabytes, something like that. It's okay, fair enough. I have 2 gigabytes. I have 2 terabytes of storage memory, and I've only used up 500 gigabytes of that. So it's and that's not just Saga. That's like everything else along with it. So yeah.
Yeah. So I'll share my screen. See if I'm doing this right. Yeah. So this is just these are just my strips. They're all digital now. I work primarily in Clip Studio. I saw Stephen. I think you're working in Procreate, right? Is that what I?
Yes, I love Procreate. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do everything in Clip Studio. I do the pencils, kind of like Stephen was saying. I do the pencil layer first. And most of my comics are just 3 panels. They're simple. Stephen, I know I saw yours are very detailed. Really liked your artwork. I look forward to reading more of that when I get some time to sit down. Yeah, but it's very simple. I do flat colors on mine, but I feel the reason I do this is like I feel like when it's reproduced, because I also self-publish book collections, and you can shrink them down really small or blow them up really large, and you're not losing anything. At least for my comics, when I publish them in smaller formats. Mm-hmm. Here's just a couple. I know before we mentioned about we were talking about like the COVID.
Yeah.
The COVID joke.
The one.
It's funny that I mentioned that, and I opened up to one where he's getting sick.
The one where you drew them like as black and white.
Oh, you mean the one where I did them as crayons?
Yeah, like that was kind of funny, like the 2 different art styles on the panel.
Yeah, so I did a storyline. That was older material. That was from 2015, but I did one where one of the characters gets sick with a disease called crayon enza, where it makes them look like they were drawn with a purple crayon, kind of like Harold and the Purple Crayon. But it looks like a kid drew it. So and that's actually before I did it digitally. So the way I did that was I drew the characters on a separate sheet of paper on crayon. Then I cut them out and pasted them onto the Bristol paper that I actually drew the comic strip on, so that they would look like 2 separate art styles combined together. And I would hold it with my left hand. So they looked even worse when I was drawing the mechanics. I wanted it to look like a kid was drawing it.
That's cool.
Yeah, that was clever.
Oh, thanks.
That's a clever way of doing it. Yeah.
I actually have one that I'm going to be sharing soon on social media that, because we were talking about video games before. Let me see if I can find that one. I have a lot here, but there's one where it's called Suburban Fairy Tales, the video game, where I just pixel art of them as if we're in an 8 or 16 video game from like NES or Super NES. That's going back a while. I don't know if I can. You can see I have like a lot of material here.
Yeah.
Lots of extra storage drives.
Yeah, well, I only have like 5 layers in each file, so like each file when I end up saving it, like I go down to like the newest one. These are ones that are going to show up soon on Comics Kingdom. So I'm not gonna. These are ones that have already been shown, so I can show you. But this is 7 megabytes. It's small. I work. It's 100 DPI when I'm drawing them. But I guess I just keep the layers small to keep the file size small. I guess I've always learned that way to just keep the file sizes as small as you can. But what Steven is doing is actually I get that too. Like if you need to go back and make changes, sometimes I'll have multiple versions of the comic strips as well.
I also store most of my stuff on my iCloud. I don't actually store it I have like 2 terabytes of iCloud memory. I don't actually store so much of it on the hard drive itself. Thus, I like draw it on the hard drive and then I drop it into the iCloud, and it's no longer taking up that much space on my computer. That makes sense.
No, that does. I'm trying to find that one story we talked about, but I don't even remember when it was years ago. I'm going to be posting it.
Yeah, I don't remember if I saw it on your site or maybe your Instagram, but
you'll see it next week.
It was funny
on Instagram because I'm trying to save the newer material for Comics Kingdom. Like I said, with the algorithm and everything, I've been posting all of my old stuff on Instagram for right now. But yeah, it's just a couple of strips. This is going to be in the archive on Comics Kingdom. So when it does launch on March 1st, I will have, I think, dating back 4 years worth of comics. So I picked a good starting point, I think, for readers. So if they do want to go back and read the archives, they can go back and start with before Little Pig number 3 met Wolfette. And he had a lot of bad dates and introduced a lot of new characters along the way. So people can go back and just read all of that, and then they can get caught up if they want. Or they can just jump in and start reading it as it starts, because when I'm writing comic strips, I try to make it so that you can jump in at any point during a storyline and still get the gag, still get the joke. Kind of like, Steven, you were talking before about like what Schultz would do, and other comic strips will do that too, where they'll have like a storyline that runs through the comic. But a lot of times, like, you may not read the paper every single day, so you might start writing.
Yeah.
So I always try to write in that way. So like, this is the middle of a storyline right here, where he's like asking who these characters are, what their names are. And she's like, oh, I'm Melanie, you personally hired me. And, we worked together for years. And he's like, oh, thank you for finally asking who I am. And you're like, I'm Henry, if anyone cares, in the last panel.
That's fine. Good.
Yeah. So these are characters that will be in the storyline that you'll see on Comics Kingdom March 1st.
Yeah, I try to do the same thing so that you could pick up kind of in the middle. It doesn't have, you don't actually have to be reading the first of the stories in there. But yeah, that's pretty similar.
And anything else you guys want to share about what's coming up for you, other projects or working with Comics Kingdom?
Outside of Comics Kingdom, also working with some UK-based comic strip guys. What is it? What were they called? It's let me look up the name of it. I think it's like Monster Mash or something like that. Bear with me. Second. Monster Fun, Magic and Mystery. It should be coming out this year. It's about Sir Rinder, the Cowardly Knight. This is not my writing, but my art. So it's also it would be something fun to look into. So there's that, and Saga. And I'm still doing the Bugateer thing, but it's not quite ready for publication yet.
And that's a medieval one?
Yeah. No, the Bugateer one's the Russian one. But
no, the
the form of the surrender. Yeah, surrender the Cowardly Knight. It's to me, it kind of feels like Monty the Python. Monty Python's done the Holy Grail kind of jokes and stuff. It's hilarious. But I'm not the writer. Let me look at the full name of the writer so don't mess it up. In just a second, I remember his name's Pete, but Pete Wells. Pete Wells, yeah. The author is Pete Wells. This is from Rebellion Comics. It's I think that they make Judge Dredd comics, if I remember correctly. And this kind of more the kid friendly stuff, the Monster Fun comic strips, and they hired me to do a few episodes of their comics, and this should be coming out this year. And it, not to my own up on the horn, it looks amazing. It is actually pretty funny. So yeah, it's something to look into.
Oh, I guess it's my turn now. So I'm really excited to be part of King Features and Comics Kingdom. Like, I'm really looking forward to the launch, and hopefully getting some more readers. I'm always looking for more readers. Outside of that, like, I put a lot of my energy into my comic strip and a lot of thought. So I'm like, that's my main focus. But outside of that, like, I have the Archie stuff coming up. So I mentioned that Wilkin Boy. So I do have that cult of that Wilkin Boy story that's going to be coming up. I don't remember when. I think it's in the spring. And then I have a Jaguar story, also an Archie comic story coming out. I hope they're happy that I'm promoting them on here. And yeah, and then I'm working on just another a book collection of Suburban Fairy Tales to have in time for New York Comic Con, because I try to go to New York Comic Con every year to promote and make some money while I'm there.
Place to do it.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to go to Comic Con. I've actually never been.
Have you done any conventions or?
No, none at all.
Should.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that.
I know.
Definitely a place where you can get more fans, promote your work, and you can talk to other like industry professionals. Just talk about collaborations, things like that.
Yes, and then for Artist Alley, you could sell some of your work and some prints, even like T-shirts or the games.
That sounds cool.
Stickers. It's a good way to get some extra cash.
How do you go about getting like a table? Did you have to like apply or something?
You got to apply.
Yeah, I think if I don't know where you're located. If you would do, are you located? I forget where you said you were.
I'm actually in Webster right now.
Oh, you're in Webster now. Whoa! Oh my God! So what time is it there?
It's like 10 o'clock in the evening. But I come back to Nevada. I live in Nevada.
Okay. All right.
My wife's Russian. We're visiting family. So yeah, I'm actually in Russia right now.
I was gonna say, New York. I didn't know if you were in New York, because I do New York Comic Con, but you'd probably be closer to San Diego Comic Con.
Yeah, San Diego.
That's my other favorite.
Yeah, but you just apply. Especially now that you've got your comic and it's syndicated with King Features. I don't see why they wouldn't accept.
Yeah.
Yeah. And make sure you mention that when you apply, like, oh, I'm syndicated with King Features, have your skin glasses on, like, yeah, I'm real cool now,
No, I've always wanted to go to Comic Con. I've just for some reason it's just never happened. I don't know why, but yeah, I need to get on that. But it sounds like a lot of fun. And
you will get.
I wanted to say that I am a big fan of Archie comics. Even as a kid, I remember as a kid reading even old 1970s Archie comics that I found at my grandma's house. So that's an IP that's been around for a long time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Me as a kid too. Like, I would go to this comic book store near me. I'd pick up all the Archie titles, and back then I don't know if they had the digests that they were sold in the comic stores, but I would pick up like the 32, the floppy issues.
These supermarket ones.
Yeah, those ones.
Yeah, I get those also. Yeah.
and then I know Archie also published like Sonic the Hedgehog and Ninja Turtles, and I'd get those too.
Yeah, I remember Sonic.
Yeah, I thought
I remember that it was around that time I started to realize that I really like Betty. I think she's real hot. So,
yeah, someone asked me that one time. Who would
Betty or Veronica?
Like Betty or Veronica? And I was like, well, like Veronica's got all the money, but I like that girl next door, Betty. So I would go with Betty too.
I just like blondes. My wife's blonde. You'll see in the Viking comic his wife's blonde.
She inspires the hot wife with the 4 kids.
Yes. The Russian hot wife, 4 kids. Yeah.
Cool, but thank you guys so much for joining us at Inside the Kingdom.
Yeah.
Make sure to look forward to Stephen Webster's Saga of Brann Bjornsan and Francis Bonnet's Suburban Fairy Tales coming soon. They are going to be syndicated at Comics Kingdom website, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And any last words, guys?
Just thank you. Like, this was awesome. Thank you for having me on, and hope everybody who's tuning in will read our comics when they launch.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you'll read our comments.
Yeah, this was a lot of
forward
fun.
to working with Kingdom. Yeah.
Definitely check it out.
Thank you for joining us on Inside the Kingdom. A big thank you to Nadya Martinez, Francis Bonnet, and Stephen Webster for joining us today and expanding on their wonderful comics. A reminder, if you enjoyed today's episode or any of our episodes, please like, subscribe, share, and review. It goes a long way to making sure that this podcast is enjoyed by others and we continue to deliver more of Inside the Kingdom. And we hope you visit Comics Kingdom to enjoy more of Suburban Fairy Tales, the Saga of Brann Bjornsan, and everything that Comics Kingdom has to offer.